Hello again, everybody. This is Steve Kallas, speaking of sports, and we're here today to talk about the A.J. Hinch interview on MLB Network with the well-known sports writer Tom Verducci. Now, I thought overall it was kind of more his first interview for his next job because, as you know, he's been suspended for the whole year, for the whole season. His suspension is over the day after the World Series ends. But I think there were some real problems with the way the interview, more his answers than the way it was conducted, and the total lack of a follow-through question in a number of areas. So there's a few areas I want to talk about. The first area is leadership. And A.J. Hinch, always had a great reputation. He's a baseball lifer. He won a World Series. Now, of course, that's all shot. But he kept talking about leadership and how he's improved as a leader over these years and how, he really wants to lead again and manage again. But let me just read you a couple of quotes. A.J. Hinch, according to the report, this is a quote, was not an active participant, close quote, in the cheating. Also, quote, he did not endorse it, close quote. And he himself twice broke the monitor. You know how this went down. They put a monitor in the dugout and they could actually see the pitches as they were being called, and then they banged a garbage can to explain what the pitch was that was coming. So on two different occasions, A.J. Hinch broke the monitor with a baseball bat. And that was his way of saying, don't do it, fellas. So I'm a little worried about that. He said, quote, to demonstrate I didn't like it. And in the report, this is a quote from the report, the players stated if the manager, A.J. Hinch, told them to stop engaging in the conduct, they would have immediately stopped, close quote. Now, we're talking about leadership. We're talking about what he had to do or didn't have to do. And this all sounds preposterous to me. To me, the players had no respect for A.J. Hinch. Why? Because if you have the monitor in the dugout, and your manager comes over and breaks the monitor with a baseball bat, that seems to me to be a pretty clear sign. He said he doesn't really know why he didn't call a meeting and tell them to stop. I don't know if he really believes or if the players really would have stopped, because what happened? They broke the monitor and they got a new monitor. And then a few days later he broke it again and they got a new monitor. That to me is the ultimate lack of respect for a manager, and to me shows no leadership at all. So the whole leadership thing is a big question mark to me. But I'll say it again, he could have called the meeting. I would have asked him, the next question would have been, then why don't you break the monitor every day? They would have got the message at some point. So that all seems like, again, an interview for next time. I'm a much better leader today than I was in 2017, when, as you know, this is when all, the MLB report is only about the 2017 regular season and the playoffs when they won the World Series. So the whole notion of leadership strikes me as almost comical, given this fact pattern. You never called a meeting. You never told the players not to do it. Again, strikes me as ridiculous. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to talk about is a specific question from Tom Verducci to A.J. Hinch, the manager of the World Series winning 2017 Houston Astros. Here's the question. Quote, is that championship tainted? Close quote. Now, I don't think anybody with a straight face could say it's not tainted, but somehow A.J. Hinch managed not to answer the question, and he just went on and on. It's too hard to tell. You don't know what would have happened, essentially, if we didn't cheat. You don't know we had such great players on that team. They might have won anyway. And my goodness, the question shouldn't be, is that championship tainted? Of course it is. It's preposterous to think otherwise. The real question is, should that championship have been vacated? And the answer to that is, I think it should be. The commissioner has already considered it and said he will not vacate the championship. But if you want this not to happen again, vacate the championship. I guarantee it'll never happen again. Because if you get caught, it'll be vacated. So this whole notion that it's not tainted or I can't decide, people have to make up their own mind, again, all ridiculous. And the other thing I'll say, along with the taint, is he's talking about how great the players are. A.J. Hinch never said one bad word about any player. Why? Well, we can debate another time whether the players should have been suspended. Of course they should have been, but they were all given immunity by the commissioner. Otherwise, we wouldn't know any of these facts. So they let the real bad guys, frankly, to me, get away with it. No player will be punished. Of course, if they were suspended, they'd have to fight the Players Association. They'd be in court for 3, 5, 7 years. They'd be in there forever. So they decided we'll give the players immunity. Nothing's going to happen to any player. Think about that for a while. And they're really the ones who did it. The report actually said it was player-driven, it was player-executed. That's a quote from the report. So this is really, frankly, disgusting. But A.J. Hinch is not going to say one bad word about any player, and he didn't in the whole interview, which had to be like a 30-minute interview. So again, that's a pitch. Please hire me. I won't throw a player under the bus. I'll take blame myself. Whether he should get a second chance or not, we'll find out next year after the end of the season. I don't really know if he should or shouldn't. But finally, my favorite one, the buzzers. Now, you heard these rumors that Altuve and Bregman, they were wearing actual buzzers underneath their jerseys, and people were buzzing them, you know, maybe one buzz for a fastball, two buzzes for a curve. And now the commissioner looked into that and found no evidence of that, and that is a finding in the report. We looked at the buzzer allegation. We could find nothing to support that. So, of course, here's the quote from Tom Verducci. Again, I think a good baseball writer who doesn't really know how to ask a follow-up question. Here was his original question. Quote, "Can you assure us there were no buzzers or anything like that being used?" Close quote. And A.J. Hinch went on for like a minute and a half. The commissioner investigated us for 3 months. It was a thorough investigation. The commissioner didn't find anything wrong, and I believe him. Now, again, you don't know whether to laugh or cry. This guy was at the bank robbery. He was there. He was there every day. He was breaking the monitor with a bat. So you're relying on the investigation of someone who wasn't at the bank robbery to tell you what happened during the bank robbery? Again, beyond preposterous. So after you get a non-answer answer like that, any good interviewer knows, what do you say? What do you think, AJ? Do you think there were any problems with the buzzers? Of course he's going to go, no, I knew nothing about it, but that question wasn't even asked. So again, the notion that you would say, essentially, I'm not answering that question, the commissioner investigated, found nothing wrong, blah, blah, blah. It all struck me as, again, an interview for next year's job market. Guy's a successful manager. How successful? I don't know, because they won the World Series, but did they really? That kind of thing. So I was disappointed at the interview. I understand what he's doing. He won't say a bad word about a player. He won't talk about his knowledge of the buzzers. If he did, he'd probably have to say, I didn't know anything about it. But once again, this guy was in the dugout every game, every day, broke the monitor twice with a baseball bat. Maybe he should have broken 30 days in a row and they would have stopped because they said they would have stopped. That's what they told the commissioner. It all smells to me. Finally, what does this all have to do with Pete Rose? Pete Rose, as you know, reapplied for reinstatement for like, I don't know, the 3rd time, the 5th time, the 8th time, the 20th time. They've never let him back in. Everybody gets a second chance. A.J. Hinch will get a second chance. All the players are getting a second chance. They're not even getting punished. Yet Pete Rose, he's the one guy in American baseball who should be in the Hall of Fame who does not get a second chance. So I just want to talk briefly about the Pete Rose reinstatement request, which I'm sure will be denied. Even though he did a lot less, in my mind, betting on baseball than playing in a game and getting signs from his teammates to know what pitch was coming, a huge advantage. So here's a quote. There's a great book by Kostya Kennedy, who used to be a Sports Illustrated writer. It's called Pete Rose, An American Dilemma. And I just want to read you a couple of sentences. So this is on the issue of should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame, not even vis-a-vis the Astros. Of course he should. They all cheated. He bet on his team to win. There's a big difference. But here's a quote, before you even think about the Astros, from page 229, the footnote at the bottom. Why it's in the footnote, I don't know, but it's the most important thing in this book as far as Pete Rose getting in the Hall of Fame. And here's the quote. When asked at the press conference announcing Rose's ban from baseball whether the expulsion would have bearing on the Hall of Fame, Giamatti, the commissioner then, had dismissed the idea, saying he saw no place for intervention. Quote, you, he said, addressing the baseball writers in attendance, will decide whether he belongs in the Hall of Fame, close quote. Now think about that. Bart Giamatti, who died 9 days later, you know the background of this. Fay Vincent is number 2 and best friend took his place and just banned Pete Rose from everything, from the Hall of from everything. It was disgusting. And every commissioner thereafter, Bud Selig, Rob Manfred, they all wouldn't let Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame, despite the fact that Bart Giamatti, the commissioner who banned him for life, said, This has nothing to do with the Hall of Fame. You, the writers, have to vote him in. And whether they would have voted him in or not, of course they would have voted him in. He's one of the 20 greatest baseball players of all time. So I'll just leave it there. But when you weigh what Pete Rose did, bet on his team to win in baseball, I understand gambling's a no-no, versus 15, 20, 25, 30 guys, coaches, manager, everybody knew about it, versus what they did. They cheated for a whole season. They cheated in the playoffs. They cheated in the World Series. And lo and behold, they won the World Series. So there's no comparison to me. So Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame for sure. I think these players should have got suspended. I understand what everyone's going to say. They wouldn't have gotten any of this information. But they just killed the manager. They killed the general manager. They both got fired. Who knows if they'll get jobs again or not. But I thought overall it was a very disappointing interview. And once again, I viewed it as a job interview for A.J. Hinch for next year. This is Steve Kallas speaking of sports. We'll see you the next time.